Imagine a place where the world becomes silent. Not peacefully silent, but unnaturally silent. A silence so deep that even your thoughts begin to sound louder. A place where clocks still tick, but time itself stops meaning anything. Where healthy people slowly become sick, and sick people slowly forget they were ever meant to leave. Far above Europe, hidden among the freezing peaks of the Swiss Alps, there stood a strange sanctuary, a luxurious prison disguised as a hospital, the Berghof. People arrived there carrying suitcases, books, letters from family, and promises to return home soon. Most never realized that the mountain changes people, slowly, quietly, almost lovingly. It steals ambition first, then urgency, then identity, and finally, it makes people comfortable with wasting their lives. This is not simply the story of illness. It is the story of time, of obsession, of philosophy, of seduction, of death, and of a young man named Hans Castorp, who came to the mountain for only 3 weeks, but stayed long enough for the outside world to collapse into war. Tonight, close your eyes and step onto the mountain. This is the Magic Mountain. There are places in this world where time does not move normally. Places where days stretch into years, and years disappear like smoke, high above the ordinary worlds, beyond the cities, beyond ambition, beyond reason itself. There stood a mountain, a silent mountain, and hidden inside it, a strange sanatorium. People came there to heal their bodies, but many slowly lost something far more important: their purpose, their identity, their connection to the real world. And one young man, who arrived for only 3 weeks, would remain trapped there for 7 years. This is the story of Hans Castorp. And this is the Magic Mountain. The journey began with a train. It always does. A machine pulling human beings away from the familiar and toward places that will transform them forever. Hans Castorp sat quietly beside the window, watching the landscape change. Cities became villages, villages became forests, forests became mountains, and the higher the train climbed, the stranger the world appeared. The sky looked colder, the air looked sharper, the people inside the train spoke more softly. Even laughter seemed distant. Hans was young, still untouched by tragedy, still protected by routine. He believed life could be planned, controlled, measured like engineering diagrams. He did not yet understand that human beings are not machines. They are fragile creatures driven by fear, desire, loneliness, and dreams they barely understand themselves. He carried a suitcase packed carefully, formal clothing, books, letters, a timetable for his return. 3 weeks, that was all. 3 simple weeks visiting his cousin Joachim Ziemßen at a mountain sanatorium. Then back home, back to ordinary life, back to certainty. But certainty is often an illusion humans create to calm themselves. Outside, the mountains rose like ancient gods, silent, indifferent, watching. Hans pressed his hand against the cold glass, and for the first time, he felt the faintest sensation that his old life was already slipping away. Hans Castorp was not extraordinary. He was a young engineer from Hamburg, quiet, polite, predictable, the kind of man who lived carefully, the kind of man who believed life moved in straight lines: study, work, marriage, success, retirement. Simple, but life rarely warns us before changing forever. Hans boarded a train headed toward the Swiss Alps. His destination? A sanatorium called Berghof. He was only visiting his cousin, Joachim Ziemßen, who had been recovering from tuberculosis. 3 weeks. That was the plan. 3 weeks in the mountains, then back to normal life. But as the train climbed higher, Hans felt something strange. The air became thinner. The silence became heavier. And the world below began to feel distant, almost unreal. When Hans arrived, he expected a hospital. Instead, he found a world suspended outside time. Elegant dining halls, people wrapped in blankets. Conversations about illness, philosophy, death, and eternity. No one seemed in a hurry. No one seemed eager to leave. And that frightened him, because deep inside, he could already feel the mountain pulling at him. The Berghof operated according to rituals. Patients measured temperature constantly. Meals happened at exact hours. Rest cures lasted for endless afternoons. People lay silently on balconies, covered in blankets, breathing the freezing air. At first, Hans found it absurd, but slowly, he adapted. The mountain had its own rhythm, and once you accepted that rhythm, normal life below began to seem noisy, chaotic, meaningless. Joachim, Hans's cousin, was disciplined. He wanted recovery. He wanted to return to military life. But others seemed almost in love with illness, as if sickness gave them permission to escape the world, to avoid responsibility, to avoid adulthood, to avoid reality itself. And Hans began asking dangerous questions. What if ordinary life was the real prison? What if the mountain was freedom? Then Hans saw her, Claudia Schoscha, a mysterious woman with narrow eyes, careless elegance, and a habit of arriving late. Every time she entered the dining hall, she slammed the door behind her. And somehow, that small sound became unforgettable. Hans became obsessed, not with who she was, but with what she represented: desire, mystery, danger. She spoke little, yet her presence transformed the atmosphere. Hans watched her constantly. The way she smoked, the way she laughed, the way she looked at people without fully seeing them. Love on the mountain was different. It was slower, dreamlike, almost feverish. And Hans, who once believed himself rational, began drifting deeper into emotional chaos. The mountain was changing him. Or perhaps it was revealing who he had always been. At first, Hans counted days carefully. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3. He still believed time belonged to him. But the mountain changes the meaning of time. Down below, people rushed constantly. Appointments, business, deadlines, ambition. Life moved forward like a river. But on the mountain, time became circular. Breakfast at the same hour. The same conversations, the same temperatures recorded endlessly. The same coughing echoing through corridors. Every day resembled the previous one. And when days become identical, memory begins to disappear, because memory survives through difference. Without change, time collapses into fog. Hans noticed this slowly. Weeks no longer felt measurable. Entire months vanished silently. He stopped checking calendars, stopped speaking about home, stopped imagining his future. And the terrifying part was this: he no longer wanted to leave. The Berghof offered something dangerous. Freedom from responsibility. Freedom from decision. Freedom from becoming an adult. On the mountain, people existed in suspension, half alive, half dreaming. The world below continued moving. But up there, it felt as though humanity itself had paused. Sometimes Hans walked through the long hallways at night. The carpets absorbed footsteps. The lamps glowed softly. Patients whispered behind closed doors. He could hear coughing everywhere. Dry coughing, wet coughing, violent coughing. The sound became part of the building itself, like breathing, and slowly, Hans stopped hearing it. That frightened him most of all. Because human beings can adapt to anything, even decay, even death, even wasting their own lives. One of the strangest things about the mountain was time. At first, 3 weeks felt long. Then months disappeared instantly. The days repeated themselves so perfectly that time lost structure. Breakfast, temperature, rest cure, dinner, conversation, sleep again. Hans stopped thinking about returning home. Letters became rare. Memories faded. The world below no longer felt real. And eventually, Hans himself became a patient. A slight fever, a suspicious cough, a medical examination. The doctors advised him to stay longer, much longer. And strangely, Hans did not resist, because the mountain had already entered his soul. Among the residents, there was one man unlike the others. Lodovico Settembrini, a writer, an intellectual, a fierce believer in reason and human progress. He warned Hans about the mountain, about passivity, about spiritual decay. Settembrini believed humanity must move forward, toward knowledge, toward democracy, toward action. To him, illness was dangerous not only to the body, but to the mind. He saw the Berghof as a place where people slowly surrendered their will, and he feared Hans was becoming one of them. The two spent countless evenings discussing life, politics, love, science, and death. Hans listened carefully, but the mountain complicated everything. Because on the mountain, certainty dissolved. Nothing remained simple for long. Then another man entered Hans's world, Leo Nafta. If Settembrini represented reason, Nafta represented fanaticism. He was brilliant, sharp, dangerous. He argued that suffering gave life meaning, that civilizati. There is something strange about stories. Some stories end when the book closes, but some follow you into the night. They live inside your thoughts, inside your silence, inside the parts of you that nobody else can see. Welcome to NOIIR, a place for people who feel deeply, for people who disappear into books and return changed. Here, every story becomes a journey. Not loud, not rushed, but slow, cinematic, and unforgettable. You will hear stories about loneliness, human nature, obsession, war, love, madness, and the darkness hidden inside ordinary people. So tonight, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and let the story take you somewhere you have never been before. Subscribe to NOIIR, because some stories are not meant to be read, they are meant to be felt.